Thank you for joining me today. It's Brian Gubernick, and welcome to the No Days Off podcast, where we believe that every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. Who should you vote for? It's a big question. It's one that we all have coming up here. We're going to be faced with in the coming days. And I am here to tell you exactly who you should vote for. No, of course, I'm not going to tell you who you should vote for. That would be the worst decision that I can make for this podcast is ever say who I believe or who I believe we should vote for, or endorse anybody, or even talk politics. I wouldn't dare do that. That is not what this podcast is about. However, it was a question that was asked of me just yesterday. Somebody came to me, someone I've known for a while, that talks to me about all different sorts of things from business to personal. And he asked me, "Hey, who do you think I ought to vote for?" And of course that's a tough question to address, and not one that I wanted to, address directly, in that who I think he should vote for, or who I'm voting for, shouldn't impact necessarily who he's voting for. Maybe influence a slight bit if he trusts in my opinion, but he needs to make a decision for himself. So rather than say who I was voting for, I said, you know what? Instead, I'm going to tell you how I think about this decision, what my underwriting criteria might be. And then it should be of no surprise to anybody that's part of the No Days Off Nation that's been listening to this podcast for a bit. The underwriting criteria, the decision-making process that we talk about, is of course applicable well outside the election. And that's the point of today's episode, to share the underwriting process for maybe selecting who you want to vote for, but more importantly, to share the process such that you can repurpose it throughout all the decisions you need to make in personal and in business. So I had said to this person, I said, I think in order to make a decision about who you're going to vote for, I think you got to break it down into a few key steps. And this is how I've been doing the analysis, because to be candid, probably sharing more than I should, but I've been undecided. Right now, some of you are listening and you're like, "How is that possible?" And again, I'm not here to talk politics, but yeah, I've been trying to figure out what makes the most sense, and I think you got to break it down into a few key steps. Number one, I think you have to clarify your values and your priorities. In other words, identify what matters most to you. What are the issues that matter most to you? Is it the economy? Is it healthcare? Is it climate or education or national security? I would literally go Google what are the 15 most important issues in this election, and then have that list and prioritize them. Consider how these priorities align with your values and, frankly, your future aspirations. So, step one, I think you've got to clarify your values and clarify your priorities. Step two, now you go do some research. Research the candidates' policies. So look into the candidates' platforms to see where they stand on each one of these issues. Compare maybe how their policies or their positions might impact the areas that you most care about. Remember, you prioritized the issues that matter most to you. You compared them against your personal values. Now look at the candidates' platforms and understand where they stand, and compare those positions against what it is you'd like to see. So go to their websites, read the most informative news interviews, and not just the ones that are going to give you the answers you're seeking. Fact check sources. Get a clear sense of their positions. Next, in my opinion, after you've clarified your values and priorities and you've researched the candidates' policies, evaluate the candidates' leadership and their character. So beyond their policies, assess the candidates' abilities, leadership abilities, integrity, track record, whatever it is that matters to you. You're going to look at specifically how they feel about specific policies, but then you want to look at their resume. You want to look at their not just their skills in terms of revenue or resume or work history, but their resume with respect to how they treat people and all of that. You also want to know historically, how have they handled pressure? How do they make decisions? How do they relate to people with different perspectives? So for me, that's probably number 3 in terms of the key steps. Number 4, consider your community's needs. Now, the definition of community may vary a slight bit from person to person. So, community may mean literally the place in which I reside, like the local market, if you will. Community may also mean my, religious community or, other communities that we are a part of. So consider your community's needs. Think about how each candidate's agenda could influence that local community. Which policies would benefit the people and the places that you care about most? Number 5, check with trusted sources. So seek out some diverse opinions or reliable news outlets, or read debate transcripts if you're really into it. Go look for expert opinions, like the individuals that you believe to be knowledgeable on both sides of the aisle. Or maybe you don't know where they stand in terms of what side of the aisle. You just believe them to be, educated and intelligent. Find out what their opinions are. Get their range of views. And then lastly, discuss these things with people that you respect. Engage in some conversation with your trusted friends and with your family, with mentors, which this particular individual reached out to me. So I guess they're running a key step here. Really talk about it to clarify your thoughts and hear their reasoning, which might give you some insights that you hadn't considered. So again, real quick, number 1, clarify your values and priorities. Number 2, research the candidate's policies. Number 3, evaluate their leadership and character. Number 4, consider your community's needs. Number 5, check trusted sources. And number 6, discuss this with people you respect. Now, once you gather all of this intel, see which candidate aligns best with everything you have in mind. Now, let's pivot this to things outside of the election, because there are plenty of things that are equal, if not more important, to what's going on here. From a decision-making standpoint, this is a great list. Anytime you are faced with a significant personal decision, I think you've got to clarify your values and what matters most to you. I think you've got to evaluate each of the options available to you and see how they align with your values and priorities. I think you've got to look at each of these options and think about second and third order consequences. These things that may not be immediately apparent, but what's the residual? What's the second and third order? I think you've got to consider your community's needs. So while you're making a decision that may impact you, odds are that decision is going to also impact people important to you. I would then maybe check with trusted sources. Like, I'm looking at these options. I believe I know the pros and cons. Let me go tie some of this out. And then lastly, maybe take this decision to people that you respect, like mentors or your mastermind group or whatever it may be. So again, this list that I gave you, which was specific to choosing your candidate, can very much be a process by which you make other decisions throughout business and life. So, not so much a focusing question for you today. I think just whole episode, maybe I've helped somebody organize their thoughts before they head to the polls here coming up. Or if you're already decided, more power to you. This process can be used in making other significant decisions in your world. That's all I have for you today. The No Days Off podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. So let's get after it.